I figured if I didn't look ready, then my coach would never put me in. After my walk of shame to the right end of the bench, I would purposely make myself look as disheveled as possible just so I would not have to play. Now, for you to truly understand the story, you have to know a little bit about me. My freshman year at Brooks, I spent my fall playing varsity soccer. While this consisted of playing half the season and the other half sitting on the sidelines with a concussion. Coming to Brooks, I figured the easiest transition for me athletically would be to play varsity soccer. And I soon came to the conclusion that I was in fact wrong. By playing it safe, I was missing out on an opportunity that I would soon come to regret. As I started to integrate myself more into Brooks, I thought about playing field hockey. Fast forward to August of my sophomore year. I found myself trying to buy a field hockey stick, and I had no clue what to buy. Honestly, I thought and I still think that they all look the same. I couldn't spot any difference. After aimlessly staring at the wall of field hockey sticks, I grabbed the one closest in eye distance and decided to buy it. I would sit in my closet until the start of preseason. I showed up to the first day of my preseason not knowing a thing. It was my first time ever holding the stick, and it was not pretty. I have truly never felt so embarrassed in my life. I was kicking the ball, I was using the wrong side of my stick, and I missed every single hit I think I tried to take. At first, it didn't really bother me, but then I just started to feel so unathletic. If you've never seen field hockey being played, the stance is the most awkward and unathletic position you can imagine. And I looked like an awkward, hunched-over tree. Adding the stick and ball to the equation only made things a lot worse. As tryouts started to go on, I would timidly hide away. I refused to hit the ball, and every time I got the ball, I acted like it was a hot potato. All I wanted to do was get the ball off my stick and get right off the field. When the ball would be passed to me, it was as if I had lead hands. See, most people could softly catch it, grab control, and move it. However, when it was passed to me, it was a scene. I would clench my hands so tight, and the ball would go bouncing off my stick. I would then panic and awkwardly run around like I just got my head chopped off. In fact, I would have preferred to run around in circles than have the ball ever come my way. Even if I happened to be open, I made it pretty impossible for my teammates to pass it to me. As the week started to come to a close, I was convinced I was not going to make the team. I mean, why would I? Every player that tried out for varsity sat in the middle of the turf, and each player was called over one by one. Despite my attempts to never touch the ball, I still kind of wanted to be on varsity. I mean, if I got cut, it would have been all my fault. When Amat and Stacy called me over, and Amat gave me that sideways look with that smile, I thought, oh no, Caroline, this is so embarrassing, you're getting cut. They went on to ask me how I thought the week went and if I was enjoying the switch. Of course, I tried to be nice, so I answered with the fake, I'm happy I switched, I had a lot of fun this week, and I'm really starting to enjoy the sport. False. Socially, I was having fun, but athletically, I was pretty miserable. As the conversation went on, they ended up telling me I made the team, which went right over my head. The most exciting part for me to hear was, I don't know how much playing time you're gonna get though. As soon as I heard that, I felt a huge sense of relief. Not because I just made the team, but because I'm never actually gonna have to play. As the season went on, I continually embarrassed myself. When our first game approached, I was excited to just sit back and watch a nice game of field hockey. After my treacherous warm-ups, I made my way over to the right side of the bench. I literally stood on the right side of the bench because I thought if I stand far away from Amat and Stacy, maybe they'll forget about me and I won't ever have to play. As the game went on and we started to score goals, I actually started to get worried. I just couldn't fathom the thought that it was time for the bad kids to go on. I would then go on to make myself look as disheveled as possible. I would hide my mouth guard, I would act cold even though it was probably hot out, and I would wear my goggles on my chest. I was convinced for games to come that I had the best bench warmer tactic. I would go on to avoid eye contact with both Amat and Stacy as they looked around for kids to put on the field. In that moment of preparing myself to look bad, they would skim right over me and pick someone else. I would then think to myself, wow, Caroline, you totally finessed the system. I continued to do this every game for the rest of the year. As our season started to come to a close, we were gearing up to play one of our bigger games of the year versus Phillips Andover, and I'm pretty sure it was a cold day to be a bench warmer. The game remained close, and I was thrilled because there was no shot I was going in. As all of us bench warmers stood all bundled up, Ama and Stacy were trying to find someone to sub in. As the game was going on and all of my teammates were cheering on the bench, I just stood there silent. The only thing I was focused on was the fact I did not eat lunch and I was starving. Caroline Cutter read my mind at that moment and expressed how hungry she was as well. As the game was going on, Cutter sketchily tiptoed over to her backpack, grabbed some sort of barbecue chips, and ran right over back towards me. We then proceeded to both stuff our faces, and we thought we were being so sly. Then, Stacy whipped her head back in response to the crinkling and looked at each and every one of us. However, when Cutter and I's faces were stuffed like chipmunks and my face was beaming red, it was pretty sure she quickly realized that it was us. She then gave us sort of a look of disappointment and then turned away. Shortly after, I heard my name being called. That meant I had to go in. To me, this was the worst form of punishment. I don't think I ever have been and ever will be so mad at Matt and Stacy. As I made my debut for 2 minutes to give one of our starters a break, I just felt those barbecue chips racing through my stomach. Ironically, though, things seemed to change for me my junior year. I showed up to captain's practice announcing to a few of my teammates, "Hey guys, I'm actually going to try and like field hockey this year." Oddly enough, after making that announcement, I was pretty confident I was going to get cut. I convinced myself that I would be on JV. Lucy Verdone did not help eliminate this anxiety. She came running over to me and pointed out that our names were last on the email that AMAT just sent out. And that had to have meant that AMAT and Stacy completely forgot about us and we were getting cut. I mean, I'm sure it had nothing to do with our names being almost last in the alphabet. As Lucy and I sat in the common room later that night, crying to AMAT and Stacy, I only got more worried. Stacy went on to reassure Lucy and tell her, "Lucy, everything is going to be okay. You're doing really well and you're not going to get cut." Then I fixed my posture, sat up, and smiled at Stacy, patiently waiting for her to tell me the same. But Stacy just looked at me and smiled. Then the panic kicked in. Honestly, I looked like I saw a ghost. My jaw dropped, my eyes busted open, I could not even place words through my lips. Then, the next morning, Lucy and I showed up to the first tryouts, acting like we were competing for spots on the Olympic team. Pretty embarrassing. It was pouring rain, and the early September humidity caused huge thunderstorms. We held our first official tryout on the basketball courts. Before we went on to do the drills, Ama and Stacy went on to tell us that we would have a full week of being evaluated, so to try not to hurt ourselves indoors. As we filed into lines to start doing drills, Lucy and I were the first to break a sweat. I couldn't slack off. I was getting cut, as Stacy just told me last night. I suddenly stopped caring about the missed balls and turnovers and focused on working hard every time. Now, this was not just because of the competitive side of me. This was because I was not going to allow me to get cut and Lucy to be on the team. Later that night, it was time for the first sit-down dinner of the year. The tables were sectioned off by advisory. I grabbed a seat and started downing my glass of water. My face was still bright red from the running I was forcing myself to do during practice. My advisor, Miss Holmes, gave me a look as I continually kept chugging back glasses of water. I slammed my glass down on the table and apologized to Miss Holmes because I was getting cut from field hockey and it was all my fault. She then looked at me, laughed, and responded, "Why would you be getting cut?" I think she thought I was kidding. I responded with, "Well, I need to find a backup afternoon activity." Again, she looked at me, laughed, and told me that she'll have this conversation with me after I get cut. She never seemed to believe the fact I was getting cut. I mean, she still makes fun of me for this. Whenever I cry to her about how I'm failing out of Brooks, she brings up this field hockey analogy, and she may have a point. As the week came to a close, I found out I was on the team. No congratulations were in order because it was pretty expected for a returner to make the team. My junior year, I slowly but surely started to fall in love with the sport. In fact, when Ama and Stacy would take me off the field, I would beg for them to put me back in. I would no longer try to look disheveled, rather, I would put my mouth guard in and jokingly smile at them. I even offered to play any position, including defense, if it meant I got to spend more time playing. This year, field hockey was by far the most memorable yet. This is not just because of the success we found on paper, but because I realized how much the sport truly meant to me. As Stacy said, and I quote, "O'Keefe, your heart truly grew 3 sizes during playoff week." When the ball hit the back of the net in our first playoff game, I broke out in tears. I never cry, but the sense of relief took over my body, and as everyone was screaming and smiling, I just stood there confused, sobbing. The second playoff game, however, I think I turned into a psychopath. I got a 5-minute penalty for swearing at the ref, even when we were winning 3-0. Definitely not my best moment. In the championship game, I was just completely vulnerable. If you know me, this is extremely shocking. I even expressed in the fondest way possible my deep love for this team. Pretty shocking. As the buzzer sounded and we all stormed the field, I was filled with a mix of emotions. Don't get me wrong, I was hype, but also a little part of me was heartbroken. It was my last field hockey game and I was not ready to say goodbye just yet. See, if you told freshman Caroline that I would be in this position, I would have just awkwardly stood there and laughed in your face. I slowly but surely fell in love with the sport. Field hockey taught me how to be vulnerable. I am a closed-off person who does not ever show their emotions unless it comes from something extreme. On the field hockey field, everything simply went away, and I was full of just raw emotion. I wouldn't trade the long bus rides, cold practices, and overtime wins for the world. Field hockey has taught me how to laugh it off. Even on the days where I would get a card for swearing at the ref, or when AMAT would call me psychotic, demented, even when AMAT would call me psychotic or demented in front of the whole team, I now know it is always best to laugh it off. Thank you.